Big news, everybody. BlizzCon for next year, the year 2026, has been announced. This just happened yesterday. I didn't have time to make a video for it, so I'm doing a video today. I'm going to play the trailer for this, talk a little bit about BlizzCon, and then we're going to talk about their Classic Games Cup announcement. And I'm also going to be discussing what this means for StarCraft 1 and StarCraft 2 potentially in the future, what it might mean for StarCraft 2 esports and StarCraft 1 esports down the road. And does this mean there will be perhaps a new game at BlizzCon announced, or maybe if we're lucky enough, even some kind of sequel for StarCraft? Obviously, all speculation. Anyways, before I get into it, let's watch the trailer.
You can hear it in the wind. An echo. A whisper. A calling home.
It welcomes us. Not as wanderers, but as its kin.
In search of a memory of what once was, where purpose ignites.
A refuge where warriors can lay down their weapons and join forces with one another. You can feel the power as countless worlds collide.
A new future with endless possibilities.
A place to unite.
To imagine.
To belong.
Are you ready, BlizzCon?
It's about time.
So cool, man. I'm getting emotional even just looking at it. So, I mean, look, I've been going to BlizzCon, working at BlizzCons since I think I was 20 years old. I'm 41 now. I was going to BlizzCon to cast StarCraft 1, almost always to do show matches where the Korean pros would be playing against each other, usually on some kind of a side stage. I was also working at the Blizzard Worldwide Invitational. There was a period where they actually wanted to have BlizzCon in different countries, so I worked once in Paris and then another time in Seoul before I moved here at that. They eventually scrapped that and decided to keep it centralized in Anaheim. And, you know, as a fan of Blizzard games, you know, not just StarCraft, but I mean, I grew up on all the, you know, old Warcraft games. The only Blizzard game I never really got into, honestly, was World of Warcraft. And then I guess Diablo 3 and Diablo 4. But, you know, it was a really special thing back then because every other game company would kind of rely on something like E3 or one of these other big conventions to announce their titles. And Blizzard deviated from that and kind of made their own space for this, where they would talk about their games and what they were doing next. And I think it was an especially smart move when World of Warcraft hit, because that allowed all these people in what is still basically the biggest MMO in the world to come together and meet. And from there, it also became a launching pad for a lot of the esports stuff that Blizzard was doing. And just a great way for them to kind of demo the stuff they were working on and, you know, allow their fans to connect with them in that kind of way. So when they canceled BlizzCon, you know, around the pandemic era, actually off the top of my head, I'm forgetting the year, but, you know, it was downsized and then it was eliminated. That, for me, along with, you know, them getting rid of a lot of the people that worked on esports, was kind of when Blizzard hit rock bottom. And, you know, a lot of people didn't know, are we ever going to come back to what we were going to be at before? Was Blizzard going to be in a bad spot forever? And I honestly didn't think BlizzCon was going to come back in the same way. And I'm really happy to say that it looks like I'm wrong. This is a very early announcement, and I'm going to talk more about this. There's one other trailer I want to show you guys here where they talk about the Classic Games Cup here. I think it's right here. So let me play this, and then I'm going to give you guys all of my thoughts.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to BlizzCon.
We now go into game one.
We have the longest, most epic history of the esports. Ladies and gentlemen, a clean sweep.
There he goes! Oh no!
I won that one, okay?
BlizzCon, you're world champion!
Little tasteless GG for you there at the end. So they've announced the Classics Cup, and this is big. While I'm talking, I'm just going to play this in the background. This is the 2016 World Finals here. So you got something to look at while I talk. So this is a really, really good sign. We had a couple indicators early on, like the fact that they were patching StarCraft 2 and that they announced they were going to be working on fixing Warcraft 3 Reforged. But basically, when there was a massive shift in who was running Blizzard, the biggest concern for people like me in StarCraft 1 and 2, or for people in Warcraft 3, like I know Grubby's talked about this a lot, or Heroes of the Storm, was that are the old games that need to basically be maintained on some level, are they going to get that kind of love? Blizzard is a special company in that they were one of the first companies to make, and this is a term I always use in my head. I don't think you guys have heard me say this a lot, but I call it forever games. In other words, they make games that you don't really have to stop playing. They're very well, or historically, they've been very well maintained. You know, they take care of hackers. They manage the ladder. You know, if there's a game-breaking bug, they can patch it. And, you know, as an example, you know, I'm 41. I've been playing StarCraft 1 for, I think it's been 26 years now. StarCraft 2 is 15 years old. I mean, this is just sort of an unheard of thing. To be able to stay in a game like that, to find out new things about it. It's why I live in Korea. It's why my wife is Korean. And it's it had a huge impact on me, right? And I'll probably be playing it until I'm dead. Okay, I don't see any reason why I would be stopping. So the concern that a lot of people had was, is Blizzard going to stay the kind of company that maintains that? And look, maybe you're somebody who plays, you know, more of the new Blizzard titles, Overwatch or Diablo 4. You should care about this too, because if those turn out to be the games you play for the rest of your life, they will eventually be old games like my games are now. And so the fear was that when there was all these people changing the guard here at Blizzard, and especially after the Microsoft acquisition of Blizzard, which seems to now be the best news ever, you know, the concern was basically, is this going to be a situation where they just try to churn out new games, and eventually when a game gets old and, you know, maybe not the center of attention, is that just going to become buggy? Will there be patches that don't get released? And, it turns out, not only is that not the case, they've announced they're going to be working on Warcraft 3 Reforged. By the way, I think Warcraft 3 Reforged was maybe the worst thing that ever happened with Blizzard. So it's such a good sign that they're going back to fix that. So, the point I'm trying to make here is that not only are they going to continue to maintain these games, they're going to have something like this at BlizzCon, which is an indicator that, they have to be maintaining these games. Otherwise, they're not going to be playable on a big stage where they're representing their brand. It's funny. I feel like sometimes with StarCraft, the StarCraft scene, this kind of goes over people's heads. Like, we got a new StarCraft patch finally, and people are complaining about, like, what Psystorm, what role that's going to play in the game now. And it's like, you guys are missing the point. If they mess up with that patch, they can just patch it again. The point is they're patching stuff. They're actually fixing things. They're maintaining the game. And if they patch it, once, a month ago, they can patch it again the next month or the month after that. And so that's a really good sign. For the classic games, I'm so excited for this because it at least means these games can be maintained and taken care of in a way where the people that want to live inside of these games and enjoy it and play with their friends and be students of the games and fans of the games, they're going to be taken care of. So what does this mean for StarCraft 2 esports? I don't think a WCS style thing is coming back that Blizzard is going to support. I think Blizzard has basically moved away from esports. I think this was the crescendo for this was the collapse of Overwatch League. I do feel like Blizzard has always been a little bit too black and white with their view on esports, where, you know, when I grew up, esports tournaments were a bunch of computers set up in card tables, you know, at some LAN cafe or you know, a place where you'd go buy Magic the Gathering cards. And there'd be some small prize pool. And then, of course, you, excuse me, you eventually had the Koreans putting this on TV. I think that every one of the classic Blizzard esports games and the new ones like Overwatch League, they just need to find their place in what is sustainable. Is it going to be very small local tournaments? Okay, fine. Is it going to be something bigger? And you got to remember that at this point in time, the Saudis have stepped in and basically taken over all of esports. The Saudis bought up EFG. EFG, by the way, if you're unfamiliar with those three letters, that's ESL and Faceit Group. They were merged, and then the Saudis bought them. And they're by far the largest esports entity in the space. So, for the first time ever, it feels like all these esports titles are properly funded because of them. So I don't really see why Blizzard would also run a parallel circuit. Before the Saudis were doing this, Riot Games was the main, I guess, rep for esports. But even they've kind of capitulated, and now you have League of Legends and Valorant at the Esports World Cup in Riyadh. So I do hope in the future Blizzard gives some kind of small, not crazy amount of financial support to the esports structure, whether that's prize pool or supporting orgs or whatever. But at the minimum, they're going to be taking care of the game. So, look, if Blizzard does announce a circuit, that would be the best news in the world. I just predict it's not going to happen. I would love to be, proven wrong on my prediction for that. Another thing I was thinking about with this is, if they're going to do BlizzCon now, it's got to be big. It's got to have some kind of a big announcement. Historically, BlizzCon was where they would announce their new games, right? I remember being at the Blizzard Worldwide Invitational is it in Paris? I think they announced Diablo 3. Yeah, and I remember kind of I had chills. I was like, whoa, this is so cool. And yeah, I mean, it was a wild time. I got to see Overwatch get announced. I got to see all these games, Heroes of the Storm. So I'm thinking about this, and I think, man, they've got to have something big in the chamber. I don't think you can announce like just another World of Warcraft expansion pack or, you know, some new updates for Diablo 4. It just feels like they have to be announcing a new game. You know, they're not doing anything big like this year, but they're certainly getting ready to do something. And my prediction is if they do announce a new game, it's going to be one of two things. By the way, I think the odds here are like over 80% chance that there's going to be a new game announced. I think it'll either be a new IP we haven't heard of, or it will be a StarCraft IP. Or it will be, the StarCraft IP. So, if it's a new IP, I mean, I don't know. Blizzard, you know, I worked so closely with them over the last 2 decades. I never knew what the new games are going to be. And in fact, I think a lot of the people I worked with didn't know. They are masters at keeping the lid closed on that. Now, there was a book that was published by Jason Schreier. I hope I'm saying his name correctly. I just finished reading it a few months ago, called Play Nice, The Rise and Fall and Future of Blizzard. And in there, he says that they are working on a StarCraft 2 shooter. Now, Blizzard has worked on, I think, StarCraft 2 shooters like twice already and canceled them. One I actually saw at the BlizzCon Worldwide Invitational when I was like 22 in Korea. It was on Xbox, and they scrapped it. I guess there was another one they worked on. you have to imagine all the artwork and a lot of the, I don't know, there should be like a lot of spare parts they could kind of take out and start to tinker with. So maybe it's that. Maybe it's something like Helldivers. I know when I played Helldivers 2. When I played Helldivers 2, I immediately thought, oh, they could have done this with StarCraft. Could it be a Blizzard RTS game? I'm predicting no. I really hope that in my lifetime we get a proper StarCraft 3 in the RTS world. The reason why I think it's not happening is it doesn't appear that Blizzard is hiring for people with an RTS background. If you ever want to really try to spy on Blizzard, you can just check for who they're hiring, because they're going to hire experts that have already basically succeeded in the genre before. And there doesn't seem to be any evidence of that other than people they've hired in the classic games department to handle RTS games that are already there. So now let me make the case for them to actually be working on an RTS anyways. Microsoft owns the people that work on Age of Empires 2 and 4. Those people have done a great job. I'm sorry, my cat might be walking in front of the camera here. They worked on Age of Empires 2 and 4. They did a good job. I think Age of Empires 4 was really well made. It's always possible that Microsoft might move those people over to Blizzard and have them work on StarCraft in secret. There's also been news announcements that they've talked to other publishers and developers for possible StarCraft IP. I predict in the future there's going to be more Blizzard games dropping in a more efficient pattern. A lot of the big clashes between Activision and Blizzard before Microsoft took over them and basically runs them now is that Blizzard was too slow to release things. They did things that were occasionally loss leaders. They had games in incubation that they would kill. So maybe we're going to see a couple more StarCraft games drop, more stuff in the World of Warcraft universe, maybe more stuff with Diablo, maybe even another type of Overwatch game. I don't know. I don't predict it'll be a cell phone game because I think they learned that they can't make that their flagship announcement for BlizzCon. I know there's a lot of people that are very against cell phone games. Look, if you look at the numbers, man, cell phone games are huge. If you're watching this, you don't like cell phone games because you don't live on, one of the islands in Indonesia or the Philippines or these places where they don't have good internet connection. You can't play on, and maybe you can't afford a high-end gaming PC. But just looking at what's happened at the Esports World Cup, the cell phone games do have a lot of players. So that's a reality. It doesn't mean that the PC games have to go away, but there is this world where cell phone games exist. People play them. And they're in different parts of the world, and they're usually in different situations as far as their internet connection and their situation economically. So I think it has to be a PC game, possibly with console crossovers. I think I would put it at over 50% that it would be the StarCraft IP, just because Blizzard only has a couple IPs, right? And the StarCraft one, they seem to use the least. Like, they use the Warcraft IP a lot. But it seems like we're overdue for a StarCraft game to be announced. As someone who is a caster, in some ways a historian of StarCraft, I would love to see them go back into the RTS genre and do it right. I think there's a lot of potential there, especially with StarCraft being the strongest IP for that. But I also feel like StarCraft, in general, as a universe, is a pretty strong IP for a lot of other titles too. And I do think even if you have a non-RTS game for StarCraft announced, it'll be good for the RTS genre in general because it'll bring a lot of new players who are curious about the whole thing back into RTS and might make them interested in that as well. I think when Diablo 2 came out, it did create a bigger appetite for, stuff like, Diablo 3 came out. I think it did create a bigger appetite for stuff like Diablo 2 Remastered and a lot of stuff like that. So that's my final prediction. I think we might have something StarCraft 2 related, StarCraft IP related. And if not, it's going to be something else. But at the end of the day, this is really good news. Whether you're waiting for a new StarCraft game or just a new Blizzard game in general, or you're somebody like me who's been playing StarCraft 1, StarCraft 2 forever, it looks like Blizzard is getting back into the form that they need to be in to maintain their games, new and old. So super exciting news. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please let me know what you think about this in the comments. Is there going to be a new game announced at BlizzCon? If so, what? You could always join me on my stream where I'll be playing StarCraft and a bunch of other games all the time. And hopefully I will be at BlizzCon next year. I would love to come back and do it. Thanks again. Take care. Like the video. Bye-bye.